The fork hit my plate harder than I intended. My son-in-law, Brad, looked up from his second helping of turkey, that smirk still plastered on his face. "You never even saw combat, did you?" he said, cutting into his meat like he was making a casual observation about the weather. "I mean, you were what, logistics? Supply chain? Not exactly Saving Private Ryan." Sarah's face went pale. "Brad, stop," she whispered. But he didn't stop. He never did. "What? I'm just saying, we thank people for their service. But let's be real about what that service actually was. Some guys sat at desks for 20 years and act like they stormed Normandy. It was Thanksgiving, 2024. We were sitting at my daughter Sarah's dining table in Bethesda, Maryland. The smell of roasted turkey filled the room. Cranberry sauce sat untouched in a crystal bowl my late mother had given Sarah when she got married. My wife Linda sat across from me, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. My grandson Tyler, 8 years old, stared down at his mashed potatoes like they held the answer to a question he was afraid to ask. And Brad Morrison, the man my daughter married 3 years ago, had just told me I wasn't a real Marine. My name is Richard Castellano. I'm 67 years old. I spent 28 years in the United States Marine Corps. I retired as a lieutenant colonel in 2009. I have a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star sitting in a wooden box in my study that I haven't opened in 5 years because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Or at least, I didn't think I did. Until today. Until this 36-year-old marketing director who makes $180,000 a year selling PowerPoints to defense contractors told me my service didn't matter. I set down my fork slowly, carefully, the way you handle something that might break if you're not gentle with it. "Brad," I said, my voice level, "you work in marketing for a defense contractor." "Yes," he said, leaning back in his chair like he was about to lecture a classroom. "And I deal with Pentagon procurement every single day. I understand the systems, the technology, the real strategic picture. You were boots on the ground, which is fine, but that's not where decisions get made anymore. That's not real leadership." Linda reached for my hand under the table. Her fingers were cold. "Richard," she said softly, "don't." But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just tired. Tired of this man who'd never heard a shot fired in anger, who'd never slept in the sand with his rifle, who'd never held a dying 19-year-old kid in his arms and promised him he'd be okay when you both knew he wouldn't be, lecturing me about what real service looks like. "You're right, Brad," I said. "I was boots on the ground. I wasn't making policy. I was just following orders." He nodded, satisfied, like I'd finally admitted something he'd known all along. "Exactly," he said. "That's all I'm saying. Respect for it, obviously, but let's not pretend it's the same as strategic leadership." Sarah stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "Okay, that's enough," she said, her voice sharp. "Brad, apologize. Right now." He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Apologize for what? For being honest? Your dad's a big boy. He can handle a reality check." Tyler looked up at me with wide brown eyes. "Grandpa, is that true? Were you just like a regular soldier?" I smiled at him, the kind of smile you give a kid when you're trying not to let him see how much something hurts. "It's complicated, buddy. I'll explain later." But Brad wasn't done. He never was. "See, this is the problem with military worship culture in America," he continued, pouring himself more wine from the bottle he'd brought, some $40 Napa Valley Red he'd been bragging about all evening. "We act like anyone who puts on a uniform is automatically a hero. But statistically, most military jobs are just regular jobs with a uniform attached. My buddy from college was in the Air Force. Sat in an office in Colorado Springs for 4 years doing IT work. That's not heroism. That's a government paycheck with benefits. I stood up. Linda grabbed my wrist. "Richard, please," she said. "Where are you going? I need some air." I walked through the kitchen, past the pumpkin pie Linda had spent 3 hours making that morning, past the framed photos of Sarah's wedding day, where Brad looked young and eager and respectful, and out onto the back patio. I slid the glass door shut behind me and stood there in the cold November air. It felt good. Clear. Real. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Jim Matthews. I stared at it for a moment. We hadn't talked in maybe 6 months. Life gets busy. You lose touch with people even when they saved your life once in a firefight outside Fallujah. I hit call. It rang 3 times. "Richard Castellano," his voice came through, warm and familiar. "It's been too long, brother. How's Linda doing?" "She's good, Jim. Listen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Do you know a guy named Brad Morrison?" There was a pause. The kind of pause that tells you everything before a single word gets said. "Brad Morrison," he repeated slowly. "Marketing director at Lockheed Systems Group?" "Yeah, that's him." Jim let out a breath. "Yeah, Richard. I know him. He's in my division." "Why are you asking? He's my son-in-law." "Oh, no. Oh, Richard." "What did he do?" I told him. Told him about the desk soldier comment, about the government job crack, about the way he'd said it all in front of Tyler like he was teaching the kid some important lesson about how the world really works. When I finished, Jim was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "These corporate guys, they read a few white papers, sit in on a couple contractor briefings, and suddenly they think they understand war better than the men who fought it." "It's Thanksgiving," I said. "I'm not asking you to do anything. I just wanted to know if you knew him. That's all." "I know him," Jim said, and something in his voice changed. "I know him very well, actually. He's been on my radar for the past few months. Not in a good way." "What do you mean?" "Last month, Brad presented a rebranding strategy to the executive leadership team. 43 slides. The core argument was that Lockheed Systems Group needs to move away from what he called legacy military aesthetics and veteran-focused messaging. He wants us to rebrand as a tech company. Suggested we phase out our veteran hiring initiatives because, and I'm quoting him here, "Legacy military personnel struggle to adapt to agile corporate environments." I felt something go cold in my chest. He said that, in front of you? He didn't know I was in the room. I'd come in late, sat in the back. When he finished his presentation, I stood up and introduced myself. You should have seen his face, Richard. Went white as a sheet. Started stammering, said he didn't mean it the way it sounded, said he was talking about marketing demographics, not actual veterans. I didn't buy it. And neither did the 2 colonels and the Navy SEAL who were also in that room. I leaned against the patio railing. "Jim, I'm not calling to ask you to fire the guy. I know you're not. But here's the thing. If he's talking like that at your family dinner, he's talking like that at work. And I've seen it. The way he dismisses the older guys on staff, the ones who actually served. He thinks experience is a liability. Thinks anyone over 50 is out of touch. Listen, I'm going to keep my eyes on this. If he steps out of line again, there will be consequences. Not because of you. Because we can't afford to have people like that representing us. 68% of our contracts come from the Department of Defense. You don't build that kind of business by alienating the people who run the DoD. I thanked him. We talked for a few more minutes about other things, mutual friends, his wife's new job, the Chevy I was restoring in my garage. Then I hung up and stood there in the cold staring at Sarah's backyard. The swing set I'd built for Tyler 3 summers ago when they'd first moved into this house. The garden bed where Linda and Sarah had planted tomatoes last spring. This was supposed to be family. This was supposed to be the place where the past stayed in the past, and you could just be a grandfather and a father and a husband. When I walked back inside, Brad was telling some story about a contract negotiation, his voice loud and confident. I sat down next to Linda. She leaned close and whispered, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. We finished the meal. Brad talked. I stayed quiet. Sarah looked relieved that I hadn't made a scene. We had pie. Tyler showed me a Lego set he'd built. We left around 8. On the drive home, Linda said, "You called someone, didn't you?" I glanced at her. "Maybe." "Richard. Just an old friend. I wanted to know if he knew Brad, that's all." She was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm not going to do anything. But if Brad keeps running his mouth the way he has been, he's going to do something to himself. And that's not on me." 2 weeks passed. I didn't think much about Brad or Thanksgiving. I had other things to focus on. I'd started volunteering 3 days a week at the VA hospital in Silver Spring, helping younger vets navigate the benefit system. It was good work, kept me grounded, reminded me why any of it had mattered in the first place. Then on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. "Sarah." "Hey, sweetie," I said. "What's up?" Dad," she said, and I could hear the tension in her voice. "What did you do?" I was in my garage, elbow deep in the engine of the Chevy. I wiped my hands on a rag. "What are you talking about?" "Brad got called into a meeting yesterday with the VP of Operations, some 2-star general named Matthews. He came home last night and said you must have called him, must have said something." "Sarah, I called an old friend 2 weeks ago and asked if he knew Brad. That's the extent of what I did. I didn't ask him to do anything. I didn't ask him to say anything. I just asked if he knew him." "Well, Brad's freaking out," she said. "He thinks you're using your military connections to sabotage his career. He thinks you're trying to get him fired." I set down the rag. If Brad's having problems at work, that's because of the things Brad's been saying at work, not because of me. If he's been disrespectful to the veterans he works with, if he's been dismissive of the people who built that company, then yeah, maybe someone noticed. But that someone wasn't me. "Dad, he's my husband." "I know," I said, "and I love you. But I'm not going to sit at a table and listen to him insult my service. I'm not going to let him talk about the Marines I served with, the men who didn't come home, like they were just clock punchers collecting a government check. If he has a problem with that, he can call me himself and we can talk about it." She hung up. 3 days later, he did. It was 7:15 on a Saturday morning. I was drinking coffee on the back deck. My phone rang. Brad Morrison. I almost didn't answer. "Richard, hey, it's Brad. I know. What do you want?" "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot at Thanksgiving. I didn't mean any disrespect. I was just, playing devil's advocate, making conversation by telling me I wasn't a real Marine, by saying most service members are just doing desk jobs, by saying that in front of my wife, my daughter, and my 8-year-old grandson." He was quiet for a moment. "Yeah. Okay. I said that. And I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. That was out of line. I appreciate the apology. But Brad, I want to be clear about something. I didn't call anyone to get you in trouble. I called an old friend and asked if he knew you. That's it. If you're having problems at work, that's because of the things you've been saying at work, not because of me. I understand. he said. But I could hear the doubt in his voice. He didn't believe me. He thought I was pulling strings, calling in favors, playing some kind of long game to destroy him. Good, I said. See you at Christmas. Christmas came. Brad was different, quieter, almost subdued. He asked me about the Gulf War, asked what it was like serving in Somalia, asked if I'd known anyone who'd been at the Beirut barracks bombing in '83. I hadn't, but I appreciated that he was trying. He thanked me for my service, and this time it didn't sound like something he'd read off a bumper sticker. It sounded genuine. Linda whispered to me in the kitchen while we were doing dishes, "You scared him." Good, I said. Maybe he needed to be scared. But I knew it wasn't over. I could see it in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, the way he'd pull Sarah aside and whisper things I couldn't hear, the way he'd check his phone constantly like he was waiting for bad news. And then in February, the bad news came. Sarah called on a Thursday afternoon. "Dad, Brad got reassigned." "What do you mean reassigned?" "He's being moved to a different division. They're calling it a lateral move, but it's not. He's losing his team. He's losing his projects. He's losing everything he's been working on for the past 2 years. And he's convinced it's because of you." I called Jim Matthews that night. "Jim, it's Richard. What happened with Brad Morrison?" There was a sigh on the other end of the line. 3 weeks ago, Brad presented his rebranding strategy to the full executive team, the one I told you about. Except this time he went further. Suggested we not only phase out veteran hiring, but actively recruit from tech companies like Google and Amazon instead. Said we need younger, more adaptable talent. Said the era of hiring ex-military for defense contracting is over. Jesus, I said. It gets worse. I asked him to clarify, asked him if he understood that our entire business model is built on relationships with military decision-makers. You know what he said? He said the military is going to have to modernize eventually, and we should be ahead of that curve. Said hiring veterans is sentimental, not strategic. There were 8 people in that room who'd served. Richard. Colonels, a SEAL, guys who'd earned their place at that table. And he called their service sentimental. So you moved him. I moved him to regulatory compliance. It's important work. Someone has to make sure our contracts meet federal standards. But it's not strategic. It's not visible. He'll spend the next 2 years learning that experience matters, that respect matters, and that you can't talk your way out of everything. Jim, I didn't ask you to do that. I know you didn't. But I wasn't doing it for you. I was doing it because he's a liability. If he says that stuff in front of a congressional committee, if he says it in front of a procurement officer, we lose hundreds of millions in contracts. This was business, Richard. Not personal. I understood, thanked him, hung up, sat there in the dark thinking about what it means to earn something versus inheriting it. Brad had inherited respect. Thought his job title and his salary and his Tesla meant people should listen to him. He'd never earned anything, never been tested, never had to prove himself when it mattered. And now he was learning what happens when you mistake confidence for competence. Easter came in April. We drove to Sarah's house. Linda made her famous lemon bars. I brought a bottle of wine. When we walked in, Brad was already there, setting the table. He looked thinner, tired. There were circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he straightened up, walked over, and held out his hand. "Richard, sir," I shook it. "Brad, how are you?" "I'm learning," he said. "That's all I can really say right now. I'm learning." We sat down to dinner. Tyler asked him about his new job. "How's work, Uncle Brad?" "It's different," he said, pushing food around his plate. "I'm doing compliance now. making sure contracts meet regulatory standards. It's not as exciting as marketing, but it's important. What does that mean? Tyler asked. It means I make sure when we promise something to the government, we actually deliver it. Make sure we follow the rules. Tyler nodded, satisfied with the answer. That sounds important. It is, Brad said quietly. It really is. After dinner, Brad asked if we could talk. Alone. We walked out to the patio, the same patio where I'd stood 4 months earlier and made that phone call. He stared at the ground for a long time before he spoke. I know what happened, he said. I know you didn't call Jim Matthews and ask him to destroy my career. I know you didn't pull strings or cash in favors. I know this was my fault. I didn't say anything. He continued. I was arrogant. I thought because I went to a good school and got a good job and made good money that I understood things, important things. I thought experience was just another word for outdated. I thought the old guys were in the way. And I was wrong. Not just wrong about you. Wrong about everything. I've been meeting with some of the veterans at Lockheed, he said. Guys who served in Vietnam. Guys who were in the Gulf, Afghanistan, Iraq. I've been sitting down with them and listening. Actually listening. And I'm starting to understand what I didn't before. What's that? I asked. That respect isn't something you demand because you're smart or successful. It's something you earn by doing hard things, by sacrificing, by putting something bigger than yourself first. And you did that, Richard. You did that for 28 years, and I disrespected it because I didn't understand it. Can I ask you something? He said. Yeah. What did you actually do in the Marines? I mean, really, what was your job? I looked out at the yard, at the swing set, at the garden, at the life my daughter had built. And I told him. In 2004, I was a captain. I led a rifle company in Fallujah during the second battle. We cleared insurgent strongholds, house to house, room to room. 53 days. I lost 11 Marines. 11 men who trusted me to bring them home, and I couldn't. I got a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Spent 2 years recovering. Then I went back because that's what Marines do. His face had gone pale. I didn't know, he said. No, I said. You didn't. And that's okay. I don't talk about it because talking doesn't change anything. Those men are still gone. But when you sit at my daughter's table and tell me I wasn't a real Marine, you're not just insulting me. You're insulting them, and I won't let that go. I understand, he said. And I'm sorry. To you, to them, to everyone. We stood there for a while. Then we went back inside. Had dessert. Tyler showed me a drawing, a Marine in uniform holding a flag. Grandpa the Hero written in green crayon across the top. I didn't correct him. We said our goodbyes, drove home. 6 months later, Jim called. Brad got promoted. New role in veteran outreach and partnership development. He's doing good work, Richard. Meeting with veteran organizations, building real programs. I think he finally gets it. I hope so, I said. I see Brad every few months now. He's different. Listens more than he talks. When he does talk, it's with humility. Tyler wants to be a Marine when he grows up. I told him he can be whatever he wants. But if he serves, I'll be proud. Last Thanksgiving, Brad stood up before we ate, looked around the table, said he wanted to thank me, not just for my service to the country, but to the family. Said he didn't understand what that meant a year ago, but he does now. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Linda squeezed my hand. Sarah smiled, and Tyler asked if we could say grace. We did. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I sleep well now. Brad's learning, growing, trying, and that's all anyone can ask. I'm just a retired Marine who showed up to Thanksgiving and refused to let disrespect stand. If you've been in a situation where someone disrespected your service, your sacrifice, drop a comment. What did you do? How did you handle it? Because respect is everything, especially from family.